Hello and welcome to another edition of Journalists Hangout. I am Veronica Onuchi. Today on the Hangout, Niger Delta militants demand 60% of Nigeria's oil blocks as they shun peace offer and blow Chevron oil well. Nigeria Employers Association slams Labour Minister over threat to withdraw the operational licenses of banks and telecom companies. And later on the program, federal government begins the recruitment of 500,000 teachers. Journalists Hangout starts now. The crisis in the Niger Delta is far from being over. Despite ongoing efforts to end attacks on oil facilities, more militant groups are springing up almost by the day. It appears the situation is spiraling out of control. On Tuesday, the Vice President met with governors of oil-producing states and other stakeholders and resolved to scale down military operations in the region. But less than 24 hours after this decision, another Chevron oil well was bombed in Delta State. The militants are rejecting the peace offer of the government and insist on their campaign of destruction. In fact, a new militant group is demanding that 60% of Nigeria's oil blocks be yielded to the Niger Delta region. How soon can the federal government quell the crisis in the Niger Delta? Well, in the studio with me, I have Mojid Jamiu. Thanks for coming.
Good evening, Veronica. Good evening, viewers.
I have Benga Onitilo.
Good evening. Great to be here again.
And we have our usual Babajide Otitoju.
Good evening, viewers.
All right, gentlemen, we have on the table somewhat a dire situation, I call it, but the federal government has thrown its olive branch, but the militants, two factions coming with different, one is saying give us 60% of the oil blocks, another is saying no, we are not negotiating. How dire is the situation? I'll start with you, Majid.
Well, while some oil-producing countries are smiling to the banks because the development in the Niger Delta and developments in U.S. and the Middle East have led to an increment in crude oil prices to about, as at this morning, it's trading at $52 per barrel for the OPEC basket. In Nigeria, we are down from 2.2 million barrels per day to less than 1.3 million barrels. We are losing almost 1 million barrels per day now, about 900,000 barrels. Then we have different groups of these so-called militants, so to say. We have the men, we have the Avengers, we have some other splinter groups. While some are asking for 60% of the oil blocks in the Niger Delta, some are saying they want to shut Nigeria down to zero level production. Then another group came up early this morning to actually allege that it's actually Tompolo that is funding
all of this
the Avengers as a way of negotiating. And then I see some sense in that because at the meeting with the
governors,
the South governors, and I was quite alarmed to hear that governors of states in Nigeria will be asking for. So basically, we have issues with that, and I don't think it is. America will always tell you it is not the best to negotiate with terrorists. I see these guys are mere terrorists, but then do we have the wherewithal to take them on in a battle?
I'll throw that question to you, Benga. Do we have the wherewithal to take this militants on, looking at the situation we find ourselves, different groups springing up?
I think what I would say is I think this is a script.
How do you mean?
At one point, the first group came and they were hitting us at the place of the economy. Because the only way to hold a country like Nigeria, the jugular, is to go for the economy hard now. And what is that? As the oil, which is about 70% of our revenue and 90% of our foreign reserve earnings. So if you eat Nigeria there, because the kind of mono economy that we run, that is not production driven. So they were able to achieve that with the bombing of Shell, Escravos, Focados, and all that. That were all the bombings have gone. Have shut down the most productive parts of our I would say we are even down to 1 million because there's a fixed 400,000 we cannot even touch for local utilization. So maybe you're like 900,000 at the moment. Maybe that's where we are. And one group was responsible for blowing the pipelines, which also affected gas, which also affected power generation, which has gone down to about 1,003 megawatts. Now, when the government called for ceasefire, you are now having other groups coming up, some threatening with even shooting missiles, also saying they will shut down the airspace. Now the meeting with the governors, when you want presided over by the vice president, and now ceasefire was agreed, but now there were engagements going on, and you now add other issues coming up. No, where we are right now, I think there's a bit of politicking going on here. Beyond the agitation, I think there's some high level of politics going on.
Yes.
And where this conversation is heading to, we might say we should go the way of military force, but you are talking about a region that is over 17,000 kilometers laden with pipes all over, creeks, water. And even navigating the terrain. Is our military trained to be able to handle that? Do they have the kind of intelligence? Do we have the kind of technology to even handle that region? Because so far what we have seen, our intelligence has not been in order to be able to, because right there, when you had gunboats, you had the military. Right there where you have the platforms, these guys were still committing the acts. Our military were helpless. So right now, what I say is a script is the moment the government takes a step to do something that comes up that makes them feel helpless all over. So now we need to start asking questions. The issues going on is more of a political thing. And it's now making us to visit one major issue about
I'll take it up from here now, so to ask Jide this question. From what Gbenga has said, it seems that the activities of this militants is more political than we think. Do you share the same thoughts?
It's not wholly political. There are political sides to it, but the reality is, and I've maintained this position since this whole bombings began, that the man, in my view, who is behind this whole thing is Tompolo. I've said it from the first day. And why it is so easy to narrow it down to Tompolo is that his name continues to resonate. Throughout this whole saga, his name continues to resonate. Last week, they told us that we had fled to Libya. Nobody asked them whether it was in Nigeria or not, but they want to give us the impression that Tompolo is somewhere far away from Nigeria. And I can tell you, and I also said it earlier, I think some weeks back, that the mistake that the Buhari regime made was to go after Tompolo so early. If I were in their shoes, I would have first gone after his boys and then give him a false sense of security that, look, I'm not coming after you. But you come into office and so early, maybe like the second week or third week, you wanted to put Tompolo on trial. Tompolo is like a god in the Niger Delta. He's like a god with small g. That's how he is in that area.
He installed the deputy governor of the Delta.
Everyone knows that the deputy governor of Delta says his boy. There's nobody can deny that. And he created MEND. He created MEND. You know, when Jonathan had Tompolo on his side, he was able to boldly say that, look, the October 1 2010 bombing was not carried out by MEND, because he felt that Tompolo himself singularly constituted MEND. All the big militants, they were all gravitating towards him. Whether it is Boilu or John Togo, all of them, they were gravitating towards him. So he's someone that they look up to. And he's extremely rich. I've heard people say Jonathan made Tompolo rich. It's the height of ignorance to say that. Because Tompolo had been the first story that when I was at the news magazine, the first story, the cover story that we did about Tompolo was in 2006. And at that time, he was living like a king. Tompolo would break pipelines, shell pipelines, and he will be the one to go and get a contractor to fix the pipeline. So the contract for the repair of the pipeline will also be given to him. So before Jonathan even became big, Tompolo had been already large in the Niger Delta area. So, and you see, the moment it became clear that they were moving against him, these boys, they began to attack pipelines. We were enjoying a regular power supply when this government came into power.
Sure.
And the vice president was interviewed. They asked him, how did you do it? He said, we engaged the communities, the leaders in the communities. The pipelines that were being broken up during Jonathan's time, that ensured that power supply was so bad, especially before he left office, immediately Buhari came into office. They stopped breaking pipelines. People said it's body language. It's not body language. Those guys were engaged. They talked to them, the communities, as the vice president testified, the communities, they had meetings with the communities and told them, look, protect these pipelines for us. But our government also cancelled the pipeline protection contract, which and already you've announced that this whole amnesty thing, that you are going to wind it up soon. So those guys felt, oh, these people do not like us. So it's like Nigeria against them now, we against them. That's the way they are thinking. So they think that Nigeria does not like them. That's why Nigeria is going after their big boys and all that. And after they lost an election, you know they're already in bad spirit. And then this is happening. I can tell you publicly today on this program that the moment it becomes clear that charges against Tompolo will be dropped, this whole nonsense will stop. I'm telling you, because there is no way, and I've had people from Niger Delta too come out to say, look, we know that it is Tompolo that is behind this. It's not difficult to know.
So this is the reason why the South governors are coming to say that the government should drop its
when they say that the corruption charges, who are the Tompolo? They seized, the government seized, froze his accounts. The government is putting him on trial. He's the main person that we know that is being tried now. Forget about whether it's Jonathan's cousin and all that. Look, even Jonathan does not really excite many people in the Niger Delta. That is a fact. This is the person at the heart of this whole matter. And if they are still bombing, it is because they probably think that the people who are close to them, who will protect their own interests, have not been engaged. Because sometimes we gather people, we say, oh, we are doing meetings, but the real people, if they do not see their representatives or people, their own blood amongst the people being spoken to, they will think, oh, this thing has been hijacked. And then to show that they are important, they will start carrying out such killings. You see, the Sadr Brigade did that in Iraq, and the US was forced to negotiate. Because look, forget about all that we read about the Americans. When they needed to negotiate, when it was clear that, look, this region, we cannot defeat these people, they negotiated in Fallujah. America had to negotiate. Okay, we allow you to run your own government. But they were killing about 100 American soldiers in 1 week. It was too much. So I believe that the real people who are bombing us believe at this time that their own representatives have not been spoken to, that the people that government speaking, we know they had a meeting in Abuja where they gathered about 40 ex-militants. They believe that their own representatives are not there, and that's why they will continue this bombing. But in my view, what government needs to do is continue to look for people that these guys respect. Because even if we go for a full-blown war, it is Nigeria that will lose. People will drop bombs recklessly in that area, and it is our wealth that will be destroyed. So people who are asking for blood, people who are asking for war, they need to have a second rethink. It's not every time that you resort to the use of might, military might.
All right, I'll come to you, Mojid. Let's look at the demands of this ultimate warriors of Niger Delta, saying that they want 60% of the oil blocks. You know, as we know, 80% of this oil blocks belongs to the northerners. But how possible is this for the government to yield to these demands of fine, give us 60% of the oil blocks, drop charges against this your anti-corruption campaign, drop it, put it aside, and let's move forward? They
are playing a game. You don't expect them to. They want to come with very high stakes. You don't expect them to just say drop charges. It's all about negotiation, and they know that they are holding the country by the jugular now. I mean, that's the nerve center of the nation's economy. So when they come with 60% of the oil blocks, then the government negotiates with them. Is it, if we drop the corruption charges and release some of the vessels that were seized from Tompolo, if we release them to him, is that okay? See, it's going to be...
It was even listed among the assets. Listed his vessels.
Yes, and you know, Tompolo, his name is actually government. So some of these guys will tell you there is no way a government can confront another government. And I mean, it's like we are seeing that now. That it's actually a government on its own, and it's difficult for the government of Nigeria to confront the government of Tompolo. Despite the fact that we have a heavy military presence at all those platforms and all those installations, they still went ahead. So these guys are guys that can actually stay 3 days underwater. The terrain is
they understand the terrain.
Yeah, they understand the terrain, and we don't
and those
have...
creeks are very inaccessible.
They are very inaccessible creeks.
More than 3,000 creeks in the Niger.
So, and these pipelines, this is the same guys that were given the contracts to actually protect those pipelines. So they know the networks of these pipelines. So they know where and where to hit that will hurt the country more. So it's like fighting a very difficult battle with these guys. So I think at the end of the day, negotiation might be the tool, so that at least we can push the production back to
they even know
before.
The Chevron's
platforms.
They would have done all their...
No, of course they are the ones.
Because they have been the ones protecting.
They have been the ones protecting. They have been the ones repairing.
Taking the contracts, repairing.
That is it. Tompolo is a government within a government. It's single-handedly installed. It's singularly installed the deputy governor of Delta, and I learned that the deputy governor even threatened to go back to the creeks if
No, he even issued a statement. You know, Vanguard went to him to say that they learned that Tompolo called him, and he now said yes, he called me. And he said, well, that they are harassing him and making him feel like going back to militancy.
That is
but
it.
Your boys are already deeply involved in militancy. Because this is, it is clear that he's in the background, but some people are doing that work for him. And they understand that whole area, right up to Sao Tome Principe. They understand
Tompolo is not in Libya. Tompolo is here in Nigeria. So forget about all those
with this South governors coming out with a voice saying that these issues, obviously they know, possibly they know that Tompolo is in the South. For them to have come out with this statement saying drop this corruption campaign, and one begins to wonder, are we using the militancy, or the militants rather, to twist the government to achieve what we want?
Well, I won't say that 100%. Even the governors themselves, they are helpless as it stands. Some people might be saying the governors are the ones fueling this. But some of these issues have been going on even years before some of them even dreamed to even become governors. And part of the thing we also should look at is it also brings to bear now that we are running some form of dysfunctional governance where some citizens can actually hold the nation to ransom. Why? Because the only source to fund anything right now comes from that region. Right now, we've been shouting diversification. It's a process. You will need to inject some level of funds into a lot of activity within the economy for such things to start taking shape.
We've never wholeheartedly pursued.
So we have not really, we have just pursued diversification by mouth as a form of body language. So now, the way, one of the, we can go on and say we want to, the whole world will really be laughing at us because now you are caught in between the Red Sea and the devil. So what are you going to do? At the end of the day, like Judy rightly said, the approach of this government when they started, I think they got too excited and emotional, and they were not looking at the realities of things that were happening prior to the election, during the election, the agitations from those regions where people were threatening that no, Jonathan must, and you should have looked at such things. So that you are, when you are going in, you are looking at having a government of national unity, not thinking about doing things against a region which remains.
I think they even issued a threat that if Jonathan didn't win, that they will make the nation ungovernable.
All right.
It will look like that's what they are doing.
That's what they are trying to achieve.
That's what I said earlier, it's like a script. And we have played into
the
it.
script. All right, quickly, we have a video. My producer is going to play that for us now where a military personnel was talking about if the militants attack any military personnel again, there was going to be some form of confrontation. Let's have that video now.
Okay, the issue of rules of engagement is to re-emphasize. Of recent, there have been attacks on Nigerian troops in the Niger Delta. That is no longer acceptable. Anywhere troops are attacked, formation commanders will apply the rules of engagement to the fullest, and they will follow the attackers to wherever they came from. The 2 weeks ceasefire was such that all military operations were supposed to cease to enable government apply the non-kinetic means of reaching out to the militants. Now the militants have resorted to busting pipelines. We will tarry a while. If this does not stop, we will decisively act wherever it's necessary.
All right. What do you make of his statement? Decisively act. That carries a lot, and the impact of it could be beyond what they might be able to handle. Don't you think, Majid?
There's going to be collateral damage. They'll be dealing with innocent, like
innocent
what we saw. Yeah, like what we saw in Baramatu. You can see videos of the hopeless, I mean the hapless masses that people run into the bush.
It's not the
The real guys are in the creeks,
there,
and our guys, our military, they can't get there. I mean, this is quite obvious. These guys, they know this terrain more than you think. And there are some creeks that you move. In fact, you need to even dive. You drop your a boat somewhere. You go underwater and go on the other side. I mean, it's not. It goes beyond
somebody was telling me
mere
that
threats.
Niger Delta, that if you see a boat suddenly capsize, that you have to be careful. That before you know it, a sniper will just come from under the same boat and open fire. So they are so used to.
So
these guys can.
And our military is not trained in that kind of warfare.
No, the thing really is, look, hundreds of kilometers of pipelines running through communities.
Several thousands.
You see pictures of pipelines on the surface of the earth. That's we even see children running on top of those pipelines.
Even under
So
passing
it
through
is
houses.
not difficult to burst those pipelines.
Yeah.
And there is no way our military can fully protect
All the
pipelines. And Niger Delta militants know that there are 3 major points through which oil is exported out of Nigeria. And they can access all those places. So to inflict damage is not so difficult. Even if we put 1 million soldiers in that area, we can't protect every pipeline. It's a fact. That's why it is important that we find a way to stop these boys from going on and on, because if this goes on, honestly, Nigeria will be in deep shit. We can
be down to zero.
Already we are in a very bad state.
Yeah.
So things must not get worse.
All right, quickly, we have a caller, Alex from Benue State. Are you there? Go ahead with your contribution. Alex, are you there?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead with your contribution.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, as soon as you are able to get in touch with us again, do call back in. Now, quickly, what is, as dire as this situation is, as you gentlemen have explained, is there a way forward out of this beyond dialogue? And if dialoguing, how should the government go about it? Because, like Jide noted, engaging the stakeholders, how should the government go about handling all of this?
I think there's, I mean, we're getting some feelers that a meeting is taking place in the UK between some representatives of these militants and the representatives of the federal government, and also the former President Olusegun Obasanjo and Jonathan. But how far that is true, I don't know. But then we need that kind of engagement where, like Jide said, somebody that can actually talk to maybe Tompolo or any of the leaders of these militants that they can listen to. I mean, when the VP represented the president at the cleanup of Ogoniland, I remember the paramount ruler of the Ogoniland said, even when Jonathan was there, I mean, neglected them. So these are some of the issues that we need to address. We have so many splinter groups now. I mean, you see a form of aggrieved group
Parties.
of people. Different people are aggrieved.
If it continues,
So
we're in trouble.
Yeah,
Everybody coming up.
we need
You can't
to
manage
actually find a way out of this, and it has to be through dialogue and serious engagement.
All right, Benga.
Well, one of the things I tell, they've named a lot of demands, and some of the things that have led to where we are having the issue of the Maritime University, for example. They're talking about the amnesty program. They're talking about those schooling all over the world that access to funds have been cut off. I think there is a high
Forex.
Yeah, no Forex and all that. So I think there's some level of us trading that should go on from now. It's beyond just dialoguing. It's about putting some things in place
that people can see.
That people can see and feel. That will make the negotiations go better. But if we are just talking and we're not putting things in place that have led to some of these agitations, then we're still going to have going around the same circle. Also, we still need to visit some of the things that were agreed when this amnesty program first started. What, for me, we have not even done up to 20% of some of those things. And those are some of the things we also need to revisit. Whatever they are throwing at us, they also know most of it are unrealistic. But you need to put some things, throw some things out. You know, using like a stick and carrot approach.
All right.
Not
Quickly, Babajide, you need to say
Yes,
this.
I think that someone like Ike Clark could be useful. He's an old man, and the people respect him. It may not always make sense when he talks, but his people, they respect him. So I think that they should look for him and appeal to him to use his influence, talk to these boys. Somebody suggested that, one highly placed person in the Niger Delta suggested that, and I think it won't be a bad idea
All right.
to get him involved in these negotiations.
All right. We will be taking a break now. We are signing off the entertainment channel. But the program threat to sanction companies retrenching workers. Stay with us. The prevailing economic situation in Nigeria is worrisome. People are losing their jobs and some workers are not getting paid at all. The banking sector has sacked about 3,000 workers in the past weeks, and other employers of labor are threatening to do same. But this development troubles the federal government. Recently, the Minister of Labour and Productivity, Chris Ngige, issued stern warnings to banks and telecom operators to stop sacking workers. He said failure to do this will force the government to withdraw their operational licenses. Yesterday, the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, slammed him for issuing the threat. It claimed the minister is ignorant of Nigeria's labor laws. The Senate has also summoned the minister to explain the threat. Was the minister's threat truly out of line? I'm throwing that question back to you, gentlemen. Was the minister's threat out of line? Majid.
Seriously out of line.
Laughable.
Very laughable. If you, okay, fine, if he withdraws the license of Skybank, for example, that sacked, I think, around 35 workers, is it going to shut down or withdraw the license of a Unilever or a Guinness or Nigerian breweries when they lay off their staff? I mean, the government withdrew all its accounts from all these banks under TSA. Mm-hmm. We all know that most of the banks, they live on interest and deposits from
public sector funds.
Public sector funds. And through TSA alone, about 1.2 trillion has been withdrawn for them, and we are housed in the CBN.
2 trillion.
So what are we
what
are we talking about? I mean, it's just laughable that the minister, Chris Ngige, can come out and say that instead of it's like you beat a child, and you are saying no, it should not cry. No. I mean, it's,
so if I see those tears in your eyes,
so
I'm money the child.
Profits are falling. Yes. First Bank, for example, from a dividend of 1 hour 70 kobo last year, they are down to just 15 kobo dividend.
About 80% down.
More than 80% down. And they are projected that it's going to remain so for the next 5 years before they can actually stabilize. Because, and they have also given a hint that they are going to lay off about 1,000 staff. That's First Bank. So, and you, Minister, instead of engaging with them or actually talking to talk to the federal government and see how the finance minister can release some of these funds that they use to, increase their balance sheets. Instead of doing that, we are threatening to withdraw their license. I think that statement is out of place, and they should actually apologize to the banks.
Apologies.
Yeah.
Benga.
I will look at it from two angles. The first angle I will look at it from is, I think when President Buhari returns, he needs to ask this man to leave that seat. Because as long as you have institutions within the private sector, they are doing their annual tax returns to FRS, they are paying their taxes. Mm-hmm. As long as they have not violated the regulation within the financial sector, no government has any power to say you are going to sanction any bank. Meanwhile, what has led to this? We need to look at empirical information or data. Number one, imports are down. Exports are also down because of our monetary control, monetary policy, and also our FX policies. Even for foreign direct investment is down at the moment because you bring your funds in, you cannot repatriate your funds.
Yes.
You are also looking at ban of about 43 items, which has affected about 728 businesses. You ban 43 items, but you have hampered 728 businesses. You're also looking at the manufacturing and production that have been laying off over and over because the denial of access to FX to be able to buy raw materials for production because of the monetary policies that we've put in place. So now, how do banks make money? We run a mono economy that is hinged on oil. And government, which means government is the biggest spender in that economy. Now, the TSA concept did not even come from Jonathan. It was one of the aftershoots of the Confab.
Yes.
It was not even from Jonathan. It was from the Confab report. So there was a phase-by-phase plan to implement TSA. Some people will say, oh, corruption. No, there was a phase-by-phase plan because I was part of implementing TSA within the aviation sector for some of these regulatory agencies. And some of them actually had exemptions by law, not to have the full funds being taken out of the system. So now the president came and issued an order. Everybody, I would say, is a thief. So take all the money and just wear.
Including National Assembly.
And you put a big hole into the system These things are done systematically. And because the Jonathan administration had a phased rollout plan, it was supposed to be done stage by stage when you are looking at parameters within the industry. Also, we should not also look away from this. Banks are not really practicing banking. Let's be sincere with ourselves. They are not really at the core of retail banking. Banks are not supposed to be, Sanusi Lamido said, he said banks are not supposed to be the one employing. They're supposed to be the one creating opportunities for employment, empowering the SMEs, the real sector, providing single-digit interest rate. But because of the kind of economy that we run, has made this impossible. Why you have permanent sex, in those days, permanent sex controlling billions of funds within the banks, and they're doing us trading with the banks. So the banks are not really practicing core banking. And right now, with the way things are, it has made it worse. Now people cannot even borrow to do import or export. Even the whole business that everybody is shouting about, nobody is even putting their funds. And he mentioned First Bank. One of the things that hit First Bank because of the major investment they made into a platform that went bad within the oil sector, hit them hard. So for the Minister of Labor and Productivity, that should understand the indices that has led to this situation, now coming out to see, even I was shocked, the Minister for Budget and Planning, Idoma, or what's his name, he was supporting the same thing that no, that's not what happens. In saner climes, government does what it needs to do to ensure the private sector does not lead to lost jobs. It happened in America, and they injected funds even into the automobile to keep people, the legacy companies, for keeping people in employment, because government is not the one that actually employs in itself.
Jide, what would you have expected Chris Ngige to have done in this kind of situation?
I would
or
have
said?
You know, why it's shocking to me is because it's going on and on this matter. If he just said it once, I could have said, well, maybe he just made a mistake and he needed to be advised properly. But he issued this threat last week. He has issued it again. He's saying as long as he's the minister, that if they continue to sack, then their licenses will be taken away. This bank, when you take the licenses of those banks away, some of the Nigerians that have jobs there, they will become
hundreds of thousands.
Nigerians who have invested there, big Nigerians who have invested, who are shareholders, they will become idle. The people that they employ, they will be sent home. So before you take an action, you have to think it out thoroughly, because it's clear to me that the minister has not thoroughly even weighed the implication of his actions. Somebody said what we have is a kind of garrison economy, command and control economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is what the minister is saying now not consistent with that attitude?
Quickly, we have a caller. Evidence from Edo State. Are you there?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evidence. Go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, sorry. First of all, I'd like to say on this issue you're discussing now, I don't think the minister should be taken seriously. He talks, to me, that's drunk talk. I'm not actually implying he's a drunkard, but it was made in clear reasoning about that statement he made. Then to pull us back a little to the issue we discussed previously, I think the truth is, I think the government should allow the 2 weeks of negotiation. But if these militants prove to be making demands like drug corruption charges and all those things, there is high time the government employs whatever means is necessary. Now, we have several alliances with other countries. There are countries that are trained in amphibious assault. If we don't have an army that is potent enough to do the job, we have bilateral relationships with countries. We could get their amphibious assault unit backed by our own units to take this, allow them hold us by the jugular. Before you know, other regions will start agitation. Everybody has problems. The IPOP people can come and say, oh, let's start destroying things too. Government will negotiate with us. We cannot allow people to hold us to ransom. Let's talk to discuss. We deal with them as is necessary.
Thank you, Evidence, for your contribution. All right.
So I think that before ministers make remarks, they need to weigh the implication, you know, because the whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. When they had the recession in America, Obama was not issuing threats. He did what he had to do. People lost jobs. It's a natural consequence of recession. Because what we have now, we are already into full-blown recession. We are just deceiving ourselves that, oh, we are not in recession yet. Some are calling it depression. Some are calling it depression. Some are calling it stagflation. We are calling it all kinds of things. But the conditions precedent for recession are already here. They are here with us. You know, so if you are issuing this kind of threats, the international community, those who naturally want to do business with us in Nigeria, they are looking at it and they will be asking themselves, what is really the matter with these people? Because if you took more than 2.2 trillion
out of the system,
out of the banks and put everything in CBN, banks, I remember, banks used to bribe PAMSEX in the civil service
to get
their accounts. Yeah. Because a lot of the time, these funds are idle. Although Section 80, subsection 1 of the Constitution says that the revenue accruing to the country should be kept in an account. But over the years, governments operated multiple accounts with commercial banks and all that. And these banks make their money from this. They can use the money to trade. They can lend with the money. What we have now is lending has dropped. Now, even banks can't just say, okay, well, let us increase deposit interest. No. What are they going to get? How many people are even saving money?
Interest has even gone down.
How many people are? More than 90% of Nigerians don't use the banks. So how much are they going to get at the end of the day? So you've robbed them of
capital.
The cheap funds that they used to get that accounted for their bloated profits over the years. Now they faced a difficult situation, and they think that the best thing to do is to begin to cut costs. Yeah. It's the same problem even with manufacturing, other facets of our economy. People are unable to pay. Manufacturers are unable to bring in spares because of forest issues. And then if they decide to send people packing, you say they cannot do it. So do you want them to be doing what the governors are doing now? Just that they will keep people 6 months, they can't pay them? I was reading today that in Oyo State, today there was a protest by pensioners. They are being owed 35 months.
Wow.
Is that what we want to see in the private sector? They would rather let people go than not pay them. They would rather let people go. It is bad news. It is bad PR for government that jobs are being lost. Yes, we know that. That's why this minister appears desperate. But there's nothing anybody can do about it.
You have to face the economy.
I think it's even wrong for him because
to have come out with
the question I ask is are the banks being regulated by Chris Ngige? No.
Is government an investor in the banks?
No.
Because it's a labor issue. That's
no, but
he's saying that it's a labor issue.
It's a labor issue, but
before it's a business issue. It's a private sector.
He's looking at it as a business issue. As a labor issue.
Maybe the minister needs to be.
You know what they told him.
That is why I guess that is why the NECA came to say he's ignorant.
It's not possible.
It's not even within his power.
It's only the CBN
that can sanction a bank.
And there are rules. There are processes.
You can. It talks about collective bargaining. The idea of collective bargaining. And what NECA is telling me is that it's not even all those banks that have unions. So collective bargaining will only happen where you have a labor union.
Not all of them are part of unions. Not all of them.
Stanbic IBC, Stanbic IBC is not unionized. GT Bank is not unionized.
So it depends on the contract of engagement they have with the people.
Of course. All right, quickly, we have a video where the Senate summoned Chris Ngige. We'll take that video now and we'll continue.
Made a statement threatening banks in Nigeria to revoke their licenses if they don't stop retrenchment. You can create a run on the banks. So it's a simple thing without any prejudice to the position of the minister. For us to be able to invite the minister, the central bank and the banks to know if they are talking at all about retrenchment and what will happen noting that all the banks in Nigeria are private companies or quoted companies. So we want to know the basis of the directive and now the basis of the threat.
Bringing an actual motion before us. Okay, it's noted. Leader of the Senate.
All right, the video there where the Senate was talking about Chris Ngige's statement. And while that video was going on, I begin to think, what could be the likely implication of this statement? You know, like we have rightly said, it's laughable, it's not something he should have said. But then, what could be the implication of this statement he has made? And does he have the powers to do that?
Well, like I said earlier, apart from the fact that that statement can compound an already bad situation, Ngige does not have the power. It doesn't regulate the banks. It's the CBN that regulates those banks. Before making that kind of statement, it needs to confer with the CBN governor. Even the finance minister cannot withdraw or issue that kind of threat. It is only the CBN governor, and there must have been some infractions. Yes. Even when some MDs were suspended, were arrested by the CBN, it doesn't even
lead. Didn't take their license.
Didn't take their license. Yeah. So the only reason why you can take the license of a bank is if it falls below certain limit. If your deposit base drops, or you have exceeded your single obligor limits, there are so many reasons. But not that you sack your staff, because there are performance standards. There are standards for if you have. There are targets that they are supposed to meet. If you are supposed to bring in certain, because different banks, they have different terms, rules of engagement for their staff. So if you fall below those, then like we have had some banks, like in Ekiti State, the governor closed down the two banks, and GT said what they are making from Ekiti State is not even up to what they make in Allen branch alone. They said, well, you can keep Ekiti State branch, and they left the place.
We asked them to contribute for the construction
of
in road.
Yes, and they said
that contract had been awarded by the
previous administration. And
they
said they have their own corporate social responsibility, which they do. And it's an ethics thing. You can't force us to do it.
You can't force them to go on. You said they should bring 100 million or so.
Yes.
That's what.
And so,
what would they explain to their shareholders?
You cannot force.
And it's not a particularly profitable branch.
Branch. You can't compel. Of course, the whole of the transaction of GT Bank, or most of the banks, all the banks in Ekiti put together, their turnover is not up to what banks on Allen or in Keja.
The full service servant state.
All right, quickly, we have Johnson from River State. Are you there? Johnson, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Go ahead with your contribution.
I'm really very grateful. This is my first time calling to your program. I've been one of the persons following this program, and I've been enjoying all of your contributions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to say that you guys should keep up, because you're getting us properly informed. And especially for my very good friend, Babajide, I love him so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you, Johnson, for your contribution. Now, moving on, the federal government may have begun the implementation of the 2016 budget. Today, screaming headlines, government plans to commence the recruitment of 500,000 teachers promised during the presentation of the 2016 appropriation bill to the Joint National Assembly last year. It says interested graduates can start registration on Sunday, June the 12th this year. Is this the dividend of democracy that Nigerians are yearning for? And how realistic is this venture by the government, looking at the economic situation? I'll start with you, Benga.
Well, it's a lot of people are applauding it, but I'm not celebrating it.
Why?
And well, the reality on ground is that government of any nation is not supposed to be the one creating employment. The government of any nation should be the one creating the platform, the enabling environment for jobs to be created. Government should focus on the economy. Right now, you have close to about 24 million unemployed people within within the labor force that is employable. You have close to 24 million people employable. Between the first 6 months of the administration of APC government led by Mohamed Buhari, you had about 1.3 million job losses, which was a function of decisions that were made around the monetary and FX policy and ban on items for imports and all those things. So now, those are the real issues. We have made the environment for the organized private sector, the real sector, the manufacturing, the SME, we have made it impossible for production to happen. Government is not supposed to be the one employing. It should not be the one creating employment, but it should be creating the enablement. That's what we spoke earlier about the banking industry, for example. How do we work towards ensuring, for example, we have a single-digit interest rate for loans? How do we ensure that we make power work for production and manufacturing to be able to cut down their expense on power? Those are the real issues. We are talking about 500,000 people. And one of the few questions I will ask myself is this: how transparent is this process? We are being told they will have to go online by June 11 or June 12, the portal comes up and people start filing. How transparent is this process going to be? Is it not going to be something at the end of the day the politicians will hijack and have their cronies being the one on power? For me, it's really a laughable thing. Are we not going to? Because we always have one project or the other. I think the last administration had what you call Shopee.
Yes.
We have always had programs like government should not be the one.
And then you win.
And you win, all sorts. But we should focus on the real sector. There are about 24 million people that are unemployed. In every nation is the SMEs, small businesses that drive 17% of employment, 70% of what happens within a productive economy. So with all these things, I will still say we are not a productive economy. We're just throwing money always at problems. Because for a businessman, if I'm going to inject about 500 billion or whatever into this, I will ask myself, what was the return on the 500 billion? How much it will be generated back into the economy, and what value is it going to add to your GDP and also impact on development? Those are the things I want to know.
All right, Jude, to you now. We remember the finance minister talking about not being able to pay about 158 billion wage bill, and now they are coming up with this. The federal government is coming up with this. How sustainable?
For me, what I want to see is concentration of infrastructure development. We talk about the rail projects, you know. I want to see plenty of action, you know, along that line, because infrastructure will create jobs. When you start building one road now that runs from here to my state in Kogi, people will be employed. New cities will be created. So infrastructure can actually, concentrating on infrastructure development can actually create jobs. That's what I want to see. Make Nigeria one huge construction site where everybody, you know, has something to do. The woman who sells kose, you know, goes to the construction site and sells her stuff. You know, look at Dangote's refinery, for example. He's going to employ 60,000 engineers in the course of building that refinery. That's the sort of thing that I want to see, because that in itself would improve the lives of a lot of people, their dependents, and the guys who will work there. So that's what I want to see. Giving employment to 500 teachers, there's nothing bad about it. But for me, I want to see plenty of action along the line of infrastructure development, roads being built, and other things. That's what I want to see.
Majid, I'd like to have your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the 500,000 jobs for the teachers, I don't think it's a bad idea as Benga would want to paint it, because there are lapses, there are shortfalls in the teaching line, which I think that one is being filled. But also, where I would rather want the government to raise the school feeding program, which has been flagged off today. It will create a lot of value chain. A lot of, I mean, in most of the states except Ekiti, I mean, the governor of Ekiti refused to take part in the program. So we have 35 states and Abuja taking part in it, which means in all those 35 states taking part, a lot of value chain will be created, a lot of farms will be opened up, because, and it means there will be 1 million eggs that will be consumed by these pigs on a daily basis. I mean, beans, rice. It will give a lot of jobs. Those are the kind of value chain that I think the government should encourage, rather than concentrating on just providing 500,000 jobs that will increase the wage bill. There, I will agree with him in that we need to create the enabling environment that will allow more jobs to be created through cottage and small and medium scale industries.
Well, I guess that will be a last stick from you, gentlemen, because we have to wrap up the show now. So thank you very much for coming on the show today. And that's all on Journalists Hangout. Join us tomorrow for another exciting episode of the program. Watch the repeat broadcast tonight at 11. You can also watch Journalists Hangout on YouTube. That's at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I'm Veronica Onuchi. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.